friends on Facebook have been following what's been going on with the tomatoes, so I want to give an explanation of what I changed this year to try to do and a review of some of the results. Tomatoes grow like bushes. They grow wide and low to the ground. It produces a lot of fruit on a tomato bush, but not only are a lot of the tomatoes laying on the dirt, in my yard, in this neighborhood, the squirrels are going to bite or eat 45–50% of them. So we lose an enormous amount of tomatoes every year, and I wanted to try something different, which is single stalk. And what that is that when the tomato starts to grow, as soon as it branches off, you choose one or the other of the stalks and kill the other one. Also, when they branch, they get in between them what's called a sucker. It literally is sucking down energy, sucking down nutrients from the plant. It wants to become another stalk. And that's how the tomatoes spread out along the ground and become a bush. You get a lot of fruit in a bush, but like I said, it's all exposed and it's down too close to the ground for me. I wanted to try it differently. So I took away every stalk and every sucker to create a single stalk. This single stalk is going to produce less fruit, but if you keep taking off all the leaves on the bottom as it grows, where the fruit is going to be is 6 to 8 feet high in the air. You tie it to a trellis or to posts, and all the fruit will be in the air, protected. I wanted to do this to see how it would go, and there was one problem. This year was a 7-week late start. It was 60 degrees when it normally would be 70–80 degrees for 7 weeks, and all the plants got into the ground late. So when I do the review, you have to imagine in a normal season 7 more weeks of growth to what I have gotten out of the single stalk. Let's take a look. These 3 plants in buckets were the best example of single stalk that grew the highest till now. And if you can imagine 7 more weeks at the start, these would be 8 feet tall. These would easily be 7–8 feet tall. And everything on the bottom is gone except for this fruit that grew. I was going to cut that away, and I'll show it to you up close. Okay. 1 stalk was allowed to grow out of the ground. Everything was cut off, anything that grew out of that. This was the first piece I allowed to come out because it had a flower on it and it was going to produce fruit. And then when I got to here, I allowed this to V into 2 plants because it was so late in the season, and it will grow high enough. But look at the thickness of these stalks, the sturdiness of these stalks. And then, as the plant gets higher, these stalks are splitting out. Even though they've split out, they're still almost as thick as my thumb. And it gets higher, and I let this split because, like I said, late in the season, and more fruit is growing on it. And then as you get up to the top, there's going to be a canopy that just keeps growing and just keeps producing fruit up into the air. There's no way the squirrels can get to this canopy. None. So this is a perfect example of the experiment. And on the plant next to it, the same thing. Single stalk, incredibly thick. You can see it best with my thumb. Incredibly thick. And that will support the fruit as it grows higher and higher rather than next to the ground. This one are not cherries. They're large tomatoes. So I have it under the net and I let the stalk break into the 2 because, again, if it's too late in the season, none of this is going to ripen anyway. So this, I wasn't able to get to go high in. There are 2 tomato plants, pear tomato plants. That's all in this amount of square space right here. That's all. And with the single stalk moving up, one of them did branch out. There are 40. Literally. I counted them. They're hard to see, but there are 40 pear tomatoes on this plant. Too bad that one. Those are really close to the ground. This was completely successful. I had to cage this off, and so far the squirrels have shown no interest. This plant was started with all the others, but all of a sudden all the leaves curled and it just looked horrible. So there happened to be one other stalk next to it, and I chose to kill the main plant, and this has now literally only been growing for a couple of weeks because it's later than all the other plants. And you can see by choosing the single stalk, it drove everything up where it's producing very late. It's starting to produce, and the squirrels can't get it this high. So again, it worked on this plant. These are the cherry tomatoes. Again, if you can see it, the thickness of this stalk compared to my thumb. And now look at this plant. We've been eating cherry tomatoes off of this for weeks. And my guess is final count of all of this is going to be pretty close to 100. Over 75. We'll have taken over 75 tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, from this one plant. I hope you can see this stuff. It's really nice. The bell peppers are not subject to this single stalk thing, but if I can keep this from the squirrels, this is just, I don't even know if you can see it. Just incredible. Incredible size. This plant I did a single stalk. You can see I chose it to be next to the trellis for that reason, but it didn't grow. However, the squirrels have been decimating every time something gets orange. This is the one they eat, but it really did produce a lot of nice tomatoes that I hope we can have some. The main bed that was just meant for 2 tomato plants and the cucumbers and zucchini, it may look wonderful, but the zucchini were male plants. We got nothing. The cucumbers Carol's been pulling a few off of, but until some grow up high, up in the top layers of this, the squirrels are taking everything. They're biting into stuff. If I see a bite, I throw away the fruit. So that's about it. I think, except for Carol's potted plants, which are pretty amazing. The eggplants and stuff, it's hard to see. I need this protected from the squirrels, so it's hard to get a look at them. I hate being in the sun. I hate it. Anyway, my general assessment is I'm happy I tried this one stalk method. Next year I'm going to make sure at least 50, even 75% of them are one stalk, and then other ones I'll try as bushes. Hopefully we're going to have 2 other raised beds and places for me to do these tests. But I am happy with the one stalk and disgusted with the squirrels and the 7 weeks starting late. But we are starting to produce a lot of fruit on the tomato plants, so keeping my fingers crossed we get to actually eat it.